Alright, here's the latest bike for the collection. It is a 1985 Puch Maxi, 2 horsepower. It is all original. Nothing has been modified that I can tell. It is non-running, so shouldn't be too hard to figure out. It was last running in 2011, so a little over a decade, but shouldn't be too hard. Before we start working on this bike, let's get it cleaned up. I'm here at the car wash. I just want to get the first layer of dust off of this bike. It's been sitting in the garage for about 15 years, so once we get this cleaned up, we'll take it home and get a good look at it. Nice and spotless. Let's get it home and see what we're working with. Now that we're back home and we got the bike washed off, it's easier to see what we really got. Pretty clean little original bike. Does have its problems here and there, such as the rear luggage rack is bent from someone sitting on it. Both pedal arms are also bent in slightly, so we need to get those straightened. This clutch and brake assembly is twisted, so we just need to straighten that out. I also want to lower the seat and move back the handlebars to get a better position there. Someone unfortunately crashed at some point in his life, and you can see that this front fork tree is bent. All the internals and everything still works, it's just slightly bent, so we may be able to use a cheater bar and bend it back a little bit, but that'll be another project for the future. Up here, the speedometer is not working right now, and previous owner said the headlight and taillight were not functioning, or not that he remembers. Talking with the previous owner, it actually hasn't run since 2008. It was parked. But yeah, pretty nice looking bike. Let's get this rear luggage rack fixed first, and maybe try to get started. I forgot to mention, this bike did actually come with all the original paperwork and spare parts catalog, as well as the original title. More paperwork than you see with a car even, so that's pretty cool to see with a bike like this. So let's dive into it. To fix this rear luggage rack, I'm going to use the classic technique of mini sledgehammer and a small piece of 2x4. But here is the before. Let's see what we can do after. As you can see, it's already starting to get much straighter, and I'm just alternating each side. I'm using a bigger 2x4 on this side, and on the exhaust side, I'm using a smaller 2x4. And I'm hitting on one side. Once it's bent up a little bit, I go to the other side just to keep it even, but we're about halfway there, and I'll let you know when we're done. And just like that, nice and straight. Again, not perfect, but a lot better than it just was just a few minutes ago. Still have to polish up the chrome on that, but it's at least looking a lot better. So I've gone ahead and lowered this seat. Got these bolts flipped around and wire wheeled just to get that out of the way. I've also repositioned this handlebars to the stock location and fixed up this wiring, just rerouted some wires. Also have this clutch cable side positioned correctly, and this kill switch mounted up just so it's actually usable now. But other than that, this bike is actually looking really good, especially with this rear luggage rack straightened up. But these forks still need to be straightened eventually. They are a little bit bent still, but it looks really good. Let's try to clean out the gas and clean out the carb and try to get it started. So we've got the side panel removed, and as you can see, it is nice and original under here. It's interesting to see that they used bolts instead of studs for this, and you can see an extra intake hole stud, at least option for one. I thought this was an aftermarket cylinder, looking at that, but under here you can see the Puch logo still on the cylinder, so this is original to the bike, just a 85 variant. I'm gonna pull off this carburetor and clean it up and put it back on. I've tried removing the carb and I can't because this gas line is stuck, and so I have to take off this coil, which I found doesn't look to be OEM. Looks like this was replaced at some point. So let's take this off, then we can get the fuel line off, and then we can get the carb off and get that cleaned. All right, someone went a little overboard with these clamps, and it kind of welded itself onto the intake on the Bing carb. But now that that's off, let's get this off and cleaned up. All right, this is the second bike I've run into where it's a 12mm carb on a 14mm intake for a 2 horsepower model. Not sure why they did that. I'm up in Colorado, so maybe the elevation has something to do with it, why they went with this configuration, but let's get this cleaned out and put back together. The inside doesn't look too bad. It needs a new bowl gasket for sure, and on this side it looks just kind of like oily. So we need to drain the gas, or at least add some fresh stuff in there before we can get it running. After getting the atomizer removed, you can see it's actually not too bad. I'm still going to clean it up a little bit, but it is rocking a 2.22 atomizer and a number 58 jet. So those seem to be correct and the same configuration as the last 2 horsepower I got with a 12mm carb. So let's just get this cleaned out and put back together. Now that we have the atomizer cleaned out and put back in, I'm gonna scrape off this old gasket and replace it with this rubber one. That should help seal everything back up, and we'll get the outside of it cleaned up, put back together, and move on to the gas tank. All cleaned up and ready to go back in. All right, let's get this installed and drain the gas tank like I said. And I'm draining out the old gas, and if you look in here, you can kind of see it's like just piss yellow, which is interesting because it's supposed to be like blue from 2-stroke oil, so I'm assuming they didn't use any oil. So yay! Now that we have that all drained out of here, I'm gonna pull this off. And as you can see, it is some gross old gas. So we'll put that to the side, and it already came with some new fuel line, so we'll put this on here and get it started for the first time, or at least try. All right, we got that ignition coil put on and some fresh fuel line. Just gotta put some new gas in here and we can try to start it. All right, let's prime this up. Gas is going in. On. So close. Checking the spark plug again, you can see it is a B5. So let's change this for a B6 and hopefully get it started. All right. This one's looking a little old and full of carbon. It is wet, so it's getting fuel, so let's just put a new spark plug in. All right, here's try 2. Just in dropped my phone, but as you can see, we got a runner. Alright, idle's still too high. Alright, there we go. Oh, sweet. So the headlight does work. And so does the horn. Nice. All right, let's clean it up a little bit more and take it on a ride. Got this one up and running. Still need to tweak those front forks. Probably have to ride around for a little while to clear everything out. But super clean little bike. And for a 12mm carb, I mean, it's got some torque for a 12mm. Since this bike is only a 12mm carb from factory, I want to give it the best chance and swap out the head gasket right here for a thinner one. I have a 0.2mm head gasket from Treats. It's about $2. And once we put that on, I'm also going to be cleaning off all the carbon if there is any on the head. That should give it the best chance of compression and get that 12mm working. Also want to swap around this speedometer cable. I just need to swap it around to the other side as well as the speedometer drive and see if I can get the speedometer working. The head just comes off using 4 10mm nuts. Once these are off, the head just pops right off nice and easy. So here's that. Last one down here. Okay. Let's see it together. Not too bad, but leaking a little bit. Let's clean it up. Now that we have this cleaned up pretty well, I'm going to install this new gasket, 0.2mm 50cc gasket, and it should help raise compression just a little bit and help that 12mm carb get this bike going. So let's get this installed. Now that we have that head installed with that thinner gasket, I'll move over to the speedometer and see if we can get this working. Once I pulled the speedometer cable off the speedo drive, I can immediately tell what the problem is. The cable has snapped. Luckily, it didn't break the square, so it's easy to pull out. This just needs to be turned around. So I have to remove this wheel so I can turn this around the right way, because the thread part is supposed to be facing backwards. So let me get this wheel removed and tighten this speedo drive down. Once I was able to remove these 19mm nuts on both sides, I was able to flip around this speedo drive to the correct position. It is loose, but I just need to tighten this nut right here so that it's actually against the speedo drive. I got it halfway tightened, but I just need to get 2 hands and tighten it. But once this is put back on, I'm going to route the cable back on and just have to order another one off Treats. Now that everything's put back together and you can see that the cable is routed correctly, unfortunately it is broken, so I'll have to order another one. But I also got that thinner head gasket installed and got all the carbon cleaned off the head. So I'm excited to see what the performance difference will be like. Let's go take it on a little ride. I might need to downjet just a little bit, but this bike is running much better than it just was. So with that thinner head gasket, definitely getting some more responsive throttle and definitely a little bit more torque. If I get a larger 14 or 15 millimeter carb, this bike would run even faster. So can't wait to see what I get in the future.